Hi guys, welcome to Signal Path. Today we are talking about the Golden Master from Endorphins. The Golden Master is a stereo mastering chain for your pedal board. It works on a variety of sources, but today we're going to be talking about guitar specifically. What the Golden Master represents and what it holds is a kind of preamp that adds saturation and a bit of kind of oomph to your signal. It has a limiter as well as 3 modes of processing that create very, very different results that are all incredibly useful as creative tools. To start, we have kind of our compression, which is a very, very interesting take on multiband compression. If you're not familiar with what multiband compression is, essentially what this pedal is doing is separating your signal into 3 bands: lows, mids, and highs. And these are all stereo signals. Stereo low, stereo mid, stereo high, and it is compressing them at different levels and different kind of rates. And within this pedal, you have the ability to set distinct compressor sort of behavior with the attack and release and overall character of the bands independently for each band. The EQ mode, as you might expect, functions like an EQ, allowing you to sort of shape things at the end of the chain in stereo, which is very, very useful. And you would be surprised at the impact that that makes often, because if you're like me, most of my EQ moves happen at the gain and kind of preamp level of my pedal board. And so rarely does my reverb react kind of accordingly. And so it's very, very nice to be able to shape in things like highs and mids across the entire signal, to be able to kind of think like a mix engineer rather than a guitarist trying to create a specific tone. And finally, and I think this is the mode that makes this one of the most unique and special experiences of any pedal I've really used in recent history, is the mid-side mode. And the mid-side mode is something that exists in kind of in the box mixing and in a variety of other places, but never have I found a place that gives me the capacity to use these kinds of effects live and in real time. What the mid-side mode does is it takes each of those bands, it allows you to collapse or expand them in the stereo field. And so what that can mean is, if I have a particularly reverbed out solo that I want the guitar to really pop and feel strong in the center channel, but I want the reverb to still feel big and epic, I'm thinking like stadium rock kind of vibes, I can take the mids and the lows and I can collapse them to stereo. So there's a very, very strong center channel, and leave the highs a normal stereo signal. And that creates this kind of big ethereal pad behind and surrounding my main signal, but with that very, very strong mid. But there's other kind of interesting and creative things you can do. It does let you collapse to mono. It allows you to maintain stereo, but it lets you also push past the speakers. And there is stereo processing that basically takes your stereo signal where you normally expect to hear it, right here, and it pushes it outside of the speakers, and it makes it somehow wider and more ethereal and magical and like otherworldly. It doesn't feel realistic. It feels like you've entered a different dimension. And so this is very, very cool, because what it allows us to do is push our stereo processed effects, things like reverbs, things like twinkly, things like the mood, or other kind of, ethereal sounding kind of delays, and push them way past the speakers and make them feel bigger and weirder and all over the place in terms of the stereo kind of image. And so this is something that is incredibly cool. I find it incredibly special. And so I'm excited to share it with you today. If you haven't really put the time and energy into what you do after the board, things like kind of DI, preamp, all of those kind of good conversations and things to be thinking about, this is a great place to start. It is a fixer for so many end of chain problems. It's an enhancer for so many of the things that we love about our signals, and just gives you more of those things. And it's a cool performance and creative tool as well. So we're going to dive into it. But before we do that, it would mean a ton to me if you would go ahead and like this video, which lets YouTube know to recommend this kind of content in the future, and subscribe to the channel to follow along. Let's get into it. All right, let's take a look at the Golden Master. I'm playing my Suhr Alt T Pro into my pedal board, which is going down to the quad Cortex, and we're treating the Golden Master as our mastering chain today. So it goes from the quad Cortex out to the Golden Master, and then finally a pair of Pre-Q 22s from Hammock Audio. Sounds something like this. Here's the Golden Master. So let's talk a little bit about what is happening within the Golden Master. On the left side, we have mode selection, which allows us to choose between the 3 modes within the pedal. We also have the ability to affect the 3 different bands, the low band, mid band, high band, and what this pedal does to each of those bands as a multi-band processor does change depending on our mode. Additionally, we have an output volume, a threshold selection, and input volume, which are going to be very important for us to sort of determine the character of what comes out of the Golden Master. But right here, it's just taking our signal, got a little bit of reverb on. It's a nice sound, but if we bring the threshold up just a bit, our input gain down a little bit, compensate with our volume, it allows us to kind of pull a few things forward. So to talk about our mode here, we are talking about the compression mode first. And basically what this is a multi-band compressor. There are, because we are running this in stereo, 6 compressors running currently. There's 2, one for each side in the low band, the mid band, and the high band. And so what this does is it allows us to kind of create a... So for each of these bands, there are 3 states. We have a on state, which is compressed. We have a mute state, which mutes out the bands individually. Allows us for some fine tweaking. And then also a disengaged state. So if we only want to compress certain areas of our signal, we can do that. And then in addition to our ability to control which bands are being compressed, we have the ability to determine kind of some rough settings about those compressors, from kind of loose and soft to pretty aggressive. But let's take a listen to just our mid band for a second. And roll through what this knob is letting us change, which is basically how this band is compressing. Turn off the reverb for just a moment. Bring up our input gain just a hair. So as you can see on kind of the lower end, it's a little bit more open. And a little bit grabbier on the far end. It's a pretty subtle change, but kind of throughout these changes, especially if you're bringing the input gain, it kind of becomes more apparent. You can kind of hear that grab real immediately. Versus So that gives you some choices for character. But what happens if we just compress a specific band? So if we go in here, disable this compressor. Now say we want to grab on these highs a little bit, make it a little bit prettier kind of as we roll through. We bring this all together and we're going to go for kind of a softer mid-range and a little bit of a punchier kind of low end. It gives us this really kind of pretty and crisp output. Just to show you how hard this compressor is working to kind of lift the signal and make it prettier. This is bypassed. And this is with it. And this serves as a really nice mastering chain for your ambient tones. Really bringing forward that kind of reverb and ambience and bringing that up when I stop playing. Like if I turn this off for a second. And so that really allows us to kind of create this thing where it feels like almost two instruments, where the ambience is there the moment you stop playing in a really pretty and supportive way, but then it falls away almost magically when you stop playing. I think that is one of the coolest kind of components of this, on top of the ability to just be able to mute through and kind of hear what individual bands of your tone are doing. I find that really helpful for making better educated guesses and choices about what I want to do with my tone shaping earlier in the chain, as well as it's kind of a fun performance tool for recording if you want. It's a lot of fun. Our next mode is going to be the EQ, because I want to save what I think is the best for last. And we're going to jump to the EQ mode, and EQ functions kind of a lot like you would expect. On this mode, you have 20 dB of cut or 8 dB of boost. And what I find this really useful for is just kind of hollowing things out a little bit. Thinking about this less like a guitarist, how I would set an EQ pedal, and more how I would want to mix guitar if I was front of house or, you know, in my mix pass at the studio. This really helps you kind of find the focus. I think, honestly, where these filters are set and how they're shaped is just really musical for creating really nice kind of subtle ambiances. We bring in a little bit of the mood. Kind of run away if you kind of let it with some of those more pokey sounds, and I find that like using this to sort of tame it out before it gets to front of house is useful for certain settings. But that is the EQ mode. And finally, this is, I think, the thing that is the most special in my mind about the Golden Master, certainly the most unique, and that is the mid-side processing. And basically, in this mode, what it allows us to do is determine how stereo is each individual band. And this is one of the most incredible experiences where we take a sound and say, you know, for right now, let's mute out our other band so we can just hear what a single band is doing. Bring our volume up a bit. Now if we turn this to the left, it becomes basically totally collapsed to mono. Back to normal stereo. And as we turn to the right, kind of moves out past the speakers. It's more than stereo, and this really, really cool way that where it hollows out the middle and just kind of leaves a ton of space and room in that band to focus on other parts of the arrangement or other parts of the tone. So if you bring this back in, you know, going from normal here, let's make that super stereo again. It feels more ambient without really changing much about the reverb tone, the delay tone, any of that. Now, if we make everything super stereo, it starts to kind of, I think, lose its shape a little bit. And that that could be a really positive thing or a negative one. But one thing that I think is useful for this is making something like the low end really, really mono. Where it's kind of something that leaves your arrangement feeling concrete down low. But, you know, we could make the top end really pretty and wide. And so you can almost have this like lower half of the neck that feels very stapled down and kind of steady, and then up here feels like open and ethereal and wide and big. But this can be really, really cool when we start layering in those like kind of twinkly ambient sounds again. All right, so let's take that kind of mid-side setting and let's create some kind of really twinkly looping and see what that does to kind of master some just sort of kind of semi-random ambience. So that's a loop in the microcosm. We add a layer underneath with the mood. So, if we bring all this back to kind of normal stereo for just a moment, this is what this sounds like. Sounds great. But now if we make the high band a little bit more stereo, just push that further out to the sides. What that's doing is it's just kind of opening up that center channel, and we could actually make the center channel mono. And now we've got this kind of two-part thing where you're hearing the actual guitar as like an instrument with this kind of random ambience that's moving around out on the sides. Or we could say, hey, you should join that ambience. But now this feels so big and wide that we might want to take the low band and make that, you know, a little bit more stereo. To show you what we're hearing kind of without the limiter, without that mid-side recording, it feels fine, but it feels smaller. It feels like less intentional in so many ways. So if we bring that back in, bring up some input to add some saturation. Now at this point we're crushing, right? This is, you're getting a little bit of noise because this is an insane amount of added volume and gain. And I don't have the quietest rig always, but it's still very quiet, clean, focused, beautiful. It's really, really incredible. So I'm gonna let this play for a minute because I like what we have going here, but special if you ask me. So that's the Golden Master from Endorphins. If you are someone like me who loves to have that big, polished, beautiful guitar sound, this is all of that in a box in a really, really impressive, really kind of easy to use and still somehow creative way. If you are someone like me that likes ambient guitar and wants to take your tone to kind of that next level, even without using a DAW or kind of front of house mix or anything like that, this is one of the most effective and fun to use ways to polish a tone, especially a direct tone, that I've had the chance to use. So I highly recommend you check it out. Thanks for watching. I think that's about it for this one. We'll catch you on the next time.